Holding on Pei Zayin, Amud Beis, we are discussing the machlokes between Rabbi Yosi and Rabbanon. When was Matan Torah? Whether it was Vav or Zayin Sivan, and Rava's explanation that it's all based on when Rish Chodesh Sivan was. Was it on a Sunday or on a Monday? So, in the last piece we mentioned that Vav Sivan, according to Rabbi Yosi, was the sixth day since they arrived in Midbar Sinai. The question is it also the sixth day since they left Refidim? The question was, were they able to travel on Shabbos? Why would they not be able to? Because they already got Shabbos in Morah. Why should they be able to? Because maybe they didn't get all the halachas. Maybe they still did not have the halacha of Tchum Shabbos, the Gemara says, which is puzzling because they carried. So Tosfos says, okay, Tchum could mean carrying, but then others question that l'chayra, they did many more things besides just carrying. They had taken apart their tents, which was considered soiser, destructing. They made a lot of other things besides just carrying or passing the Tchum Shabbos, but okay, that'll be a separate discussion. Fine. Now, the Gemara is trying to figure out the Rabbanon's opinion when Rosh Chodesh Sivan was. So the question is going to be mainly based on our calendar, and then they're going to say basically the calendar doesn't have to be the same. I mean, they didn't have yet, they had the mitzvah of Kiddush HaChodesh, HaChodesh Hazel Lochem, but it sounds like that in general we assume that they follow the same system as our calendar. Our calendar in general makes that 1 month should be Rosh Chodesh on the 30th day and 1 month on the 31st day. Basically, 1 month has Lamed days, 1 month has only Chavtes days. Why is that? Because the cycle of the moon is in general 29 and a half days, and therefore you can't make a half a day Rosh Chodesh. So one day you push it off a day, then one day you keep it on the first day, you push it off, you keep it on the first day. And that's why in general the Chadashim, the months alternate, which one has 2 days of Chodesh, which one has one. Now as we'll see soon, it doesn't really always stay that way because we have an extra bit in every month. You have the Tash Tzag, the 793 extra halakim that the moon cycle has more than a half a day, and then that adds up after a while, and therefore we have 2 months, which depends on the year. Either you have Kislev and Tevis, either both of them, Cheshvan and Kislev, either both of them are 30 days or 29 days or 29 and 30. Good. But now let's look at our calendar. So we know that Nisan has 30 days and Iyar has 29 days. Now, when you have 29 days a month, so the 30th day will always be 1 day later in the week than the Rosh Chodesh before. Because 29 days, 28 days is 4 weeks. 29 is 1 more day, so it ends up to the same day in the week. Yeah, and then the 30th day is the next day in the week. So in a 29-day month, the next Rosh Chodesh will be 1 day in the week later. In a 30-day month, it will be 2 days later. If you're looking at Aleph, the main day of Rosh Chodesh. So there's a Braisa which says that the Yidden went out of Mitzrayim on a Thursday. Tes Vav Nisan was on a Thursday. Tes Vav is always the same day as Aleph, because 14 days is 2 weeks, and therefore the next day after the 2 weeks have finished, that comes out to the same day in the week as the day before, as 2 weeks before. So Tes Vav Nisan was on a Thursday. That means that Aleph Nisan was on a Thursday. That means that Aleph Iyar, since Nisan has 30 days, so Aleph Iyar was on a Shabbos. So then Aleph Sivan is on a Sunday. because Nisan has 30 days and Iyar has 29 days. So if they went out of Mitzrayim on a Thursday, that proves Rabbi Yossi's point that Rosh Chodesh or Rabbi Yossi. Now we're attacking really Rava's explanation and Rabbanan and Rabbi Yossi. In other words, l'chayda, we must say that Rosh Chodesh was on a Sunday. How would it work out that Rosh Chodesh was not on a Sunday if we assume that they followed our pattern? Let's see. Tashma. Nisan sheba yotzu Yisrael Mitzrayim. Chodesh Nisan, which they went out of Mitzrayim. Bar on 14 Shachatu Pischayim, they shechted the Korban Pesach. Uvechamisha Asar Yotzu, they left Mitzrayim on the 15th on Tezvav. Ula Erev Loku Bechayris, and in the evening the Bechayris were killed. Now the Gemara right away interrupts the Bryce. He says, "What are you talking about? They left Mitzrayim, and then the next night the Bechayris were killed." Look in the Chumash; it wasn't exactly like that. Says the Gemara, La Erev Sol Kadaitoch. Can you say that? The person was repeating the Bryce. Says, stop. You're not repeating it right. Like you like to interrupt, yeah? You're not reading it right. Yeah, stop. Elami Bo'erev, the night before Loku B'chayris. Fine. Okay, we corrected the Bryce, not the night after the 15th, the night before the 15th, the night before Tesvav, the B'chayris died. Fine. Says the Bryce, V'oise hayoim, and that day, Chamishi B'Shabbos hoyu, was on a Thursday. Now, me, the Chameisar ben Nisan. If Tesvav Nisan Chamisha B'Shabbos was on a Thursday, which means that Aleph Nisan was on a Thursday, so then Reish Yarcha the Iyar Shabbat, Reish Chodesh Iyar, which is 2 days later because it's a 30-day month, Reish Chodesh will be on Shams. Reish Yarcha the Sivan and Reish Chodesh Sivan Chad B'Shams. Kashi l'Rabbanon, again, it's a kasha and Rava's interpretation of Rabbanon. How could he say that Rosh Chodesh was on Monday? Amud Rabbanon, what are you looking at our calendar? They had our calendar. They didn't have those rules then. Iyar dahi shaita, iburi brua. In that year, Iyar also had 30 days. And therefore, Rosh Chodesh Iyar was 2 days later, that was Shabbos. And Rosh Chodesh Sivan was 2 days later, was on a Monday. They don't have to follow our pattern. That happened later. Fine. Says the Gemara, Toshma deloy yibru. Not a typical thing that the Gemara right away says what it wants to prove with the Toshma. I'll bring you a proof that is not true. That Iyar was not 30 days. So let's read the whole Bryce. Yeah? And we're going to interrupt them again. Interesting. It's the same Bryce and it's a continuation. But it was the same mistake in the Bryce and the Gemara interrupted them again and fixed it. That's whatever. It says like this. Nisan sheba yotzi Yisrael Mitzrayim bar basar an yidal shachtu b'schein shachtu the Korban Pesach chamisha an tezvav yotzi divan Mitzrayim ula erev, and then that evening local b'chayros, the b'chayros were killed, and right away they interrupted them and said, 1 second, la erev sol kadaitoch, that evening the b'chayros died. Eloim mi ba'erev. You have to correct this, that they already the night before they were killed local b'chayros. Fine. Ve'ayisayim chamishi b'Shabbos. That day was Thursday. Continues the Braysa. He shlim Nisan. Nisan was a complete month, a 30-day month. Ve'eida Iyar b'Shabbos, and Rosh Chodesh Iyar fell out on Shabbos. Chaser Iyar. Iyar was an incomplete month. Ve'eida Sivan liyas b'echad b'Shabbos, and Sivan was on a Sunday. Rosh Chodesh Sivan was on a Sunday. Okay, here you have it clear. We had to continue the Braysa, and if we continue the Braysa, it's clear. Kashi l'Rabbanan. Okay, so think about how many Rabbi Yossi, no problem. Rabbi will tell you this Bryce is following Rabbi Yossi. Rabbanan actually hold that Iyar was 30 days, and therefore Rosh Chodesh Sivan was on a Monday. This Bryce is not their opinion. Fine. Okay. Amar Apope Toshma. In Vayisu mi Elim, Yidden traveled from Elim, Vayivoyu kol adas b'nei Yisrael, and Yidden came to Midbar Sin. And when did they arrive there? B'chamisha asar yom lachodesh hasheni. on Tes Vav Iyar. V'oisa Yom Shabbos Oyo. That day that they arrived in Midbar Sin was Shabbos. How do you know? Dichsiv, when the Eden complained they wanted food. So Moshe said, Uboiker, tomorrow morning, Gori'isam is Kvod Hashem. Hashem will appear, Hashem Shechina will appear and will appear. Uchsiv Sheishes Yom Tilketu. The next day, the next morning, Hashem said, from now, 6 days you'll collect them on. So the next day obviously was Sunday. Right? Umid Chameser B'Iyar Shabbat. Again, Tes Vav Iyar was Shabbos, that means Aleph Iyar was Shabbos. If Aleph Iyar was Shabbos, Reish Yarcho Desivan Chad B'Shabbos. Again, it's the same exact proof as before. It was probably that Papa wasn't there when they brought the other proof. Fine, it's the same exact proof. If Reish Chodesh Iyar was on Shabbos, so Reish Yarcho Desivan Chad B'Shabbos, Aleph Sivan is 1 day later because Iyar on our calendar is Chav Tes Yoim, is 29 days. So then Sivan has to be on a Sunday. Kashi Rabbanan. It's a question on Rabba's interpretation of Rabbanan. Says the Gemara again, Ami Lach Rabbanan, Iyar Dei Shati, Iburi Ibru. They made it 30 days a year and then there's no question. Fine? Good. Another question. Amalei Rav Chavivi Mechoizno. Rav Chavivi from the city Mechuzah, or some say Rav Asi Mechoizno, Rav Asi from the city Mechuzah. Rav Ashi told Rav Ashi, Toshma. It says, Vayi B'Chodesh Rishon, V'Shana Hashemis, on the second year, on Aleph Nisan, B'Echel HaChodesh, Hu Kama Mishkan. Tana, there was a brayso which says like this, Oisa HaYoim, that day notal eser atoris. There was 10 special things in that day. First of all, it was Rishon L'Maaseh Bereishis. It was a Sunday. Aleph Nisan was Sunday, like this year. Rishon L'Nesim. The first Nasi brought the korban Aleph Nisan. Rishon L'Kehuna. It's the first day that Aaron and his children worked as Kohanim. Till then, Moshe was working as the Kohen. Rishon La'avodah. It's the first day that the regular system of Avodah was brought. The Korban Tamid. The regular system was started being brought on that day. Rishon Yiridas Ha'esh. It's the first day that Hashem's fire came down and burnt the Karbanis. Rishon Achilas Kadashim. It's the first day that there was the rules where they should eat the Karbanis. They have to eat it in the Azara. You can't eat it outside the Azara. The whole system started that day. Rishon Lishkin Shechina. It's the first day that Shechina rested over there in the Mishkan. Till then it wasn't considered resting. Rishon Levarachas Yisrael. It's the first day that they bench Birchas Kohanim. Rishon Leisur Habamis. From that day, Yidden were not allowed to bring a korban to Hashem anywhere else but in the Mishkan. So that day it started. And Rishon Lechadoshim, it was the first day of the first month. It's Aleph Nisan. So we see that Aleph Nisan was on a Sunday. Okay, now let's make a cheshbon. Again, taking the typical, if you want to say, the typical year, the year which is called Kisidra, that goes in the pattern of 1 month 29, 1 month 30. 1 month 29, 1 month 30. So the year has 354 days. Now, 354 days, when you have 50 weeks, you have 350 days. So basically, the 4 extra days are 4 days more than 50 weeks. So obviously, day 1 of the extra 4 brings you to the same day that Rosh Hashanah was. Then you have another 3 days. So the next Rosh Hashanah will be 4 days off the year before. So if you have a Shana Kisidra, a regular pattern year, then Rosh Hashanah of the next year will be 4 days in the week later than the year before. And there's a brayso which is a bit hard to understand. It's discussed. I don't know exactly all the details, or I don't really know. I didn't look into the sugya. But There's a brisa, a Tana, which says that we keep that pattern. Every year is 2930, 2930, 2930, which is a bit hard to understand. It'll ruin all the calculations. The reason why we have to make Cheshvan and Kislev the way we make it is because it's not exact. Because you have those extra days in the extra chalokim, the extra split seconds in each month, therefore it adds up, and you can't just keep on going with that pattern. But there's a Tana which says that, no, that's the pattern. Which you could say, I think even, it is explained that even according to them, it's not Punkt L'Chazoy. But I guess the idea is, if you have no proof otherwise, you assume that. In other words, the regular cheshbon is Kisidra. 2930, 2930, 2930. You have to, I guess, have a proof to say that it's otherwise. Unless they decided for some reason to change the calculation. In other words, there's opinion would say that if there was, for whatever reason, Beis Din saw that they have to make a Chodesh on the 30th day or on the 31st day, they're allowed to. Obviously, it has to be in a way that it should eventually be able to come back to the regular cheshbon, that the next month you should be able to see the new moon on the night 30. They shouldn't see it earlier. It shouldn't ruin the whole cheshbon. But if they were able to calculate that this month we could not follow the original pattern and say that Rosh Chodesh is one day earlier or one day later, the tzorich they could do it. And therefore, we don't have to assume that the year was in the regular pattern. We can assume that it was a bit different. But again, the initial understanding is, we assume, as long as we have no proof otherwise, that a year is 354 days. Which therefore, the Rosh Hashanah of the year 2 will be 4 days in a week later than year 1. And so every Rosh Chodesh in that year will be 4 days in the week later than the year before. So now, if we find that Rosh Chodesh Nisan in year 2 was on a Sunday, so then in year 1 it must have been on a Wednesday. Now, if it's on a Wednesday, we're b'chal in trouble, because no one said it's on a Wednesday. According to the simple understanding, then Rabbi Yosi would say that it's on a Thursday, as we brought from the Brises till now. And Rabbanon, if we won't want to fit them with the Brises we said before, then they'll say that it was on a Friday. Once we found that it's on a Thursday, we have to say that they had 2 months of 30 in between. But if we don't assume that, if we assume that they also follow the regular pattern, that there has to be 2930, 2930, so then they must say that Rosh Chodesh Nisan was on a Friday. And Rabbi Yosi says it was on a Thursday. And here we see L'choyre in a Brisa that it was a Wednesday. It doesn't say that, but it says that the second year was Rosh Chodesh Nisan was on a Sunday. So the year before it must have been on a Wednesday. Let's see. Says the Gemara, since in year 2, Rosh Chodesh Nisan was Chad b'Shabbos, wasn't a Sunday. The Eshtaka, there must be that last year, B'Davah b'Shabbos, must have been on a Wednesday. Who says? The Tanya, Acherim Ma'imrim, Ein bein atzeres la'atzeres, between this year's Shavuos and last year's Shavuos. Or ve'ein bein Rosh Hashanah Rosh Hashanah, between this year's Rosh Hashanah and last year's Rosh Hashanah. Elo daled yomim bilvad. There'll be only 4 days difference. If it was 2 Adars, hey, because this opinion holds that if they make a second Adar, you make the second Adar 29 days. Both of them 29, not like we do. We do, the first one is 30, the second is 29. According to Acherim, both were 29. If both were 29, so Chodesh Hashanah Mubares adds 1 day. So therefore, a year's Kviyas from last year's Kviyas is always either 4 days off if it was a regular year, or 5 days off if it was a Mubar year. So here, according to Rabbanon, Havaleresh Yarcha Dior Mali de Shabbato. According to this cheshbon, that Rish Chodesh Nisan was on a Wednesday. So then Rish Chodesh Nisan was on a Wednesday. So then you have 3 days later, so it was on a Shabbos. Rish Chodesh Sivan was on a Shabbos. 1 second. Yeah. So Rish Yarcha Dior Mali de Shabbato. Rish Chodesh is 2 days later because it was a Chodesh Molei. That's on a Friday. Rish Yarcha Dior, which is 3 days later in the week. Shabbato. Kasha Bein Rabbi Yossi Bein Rabbanan. It doesn't match with anybody. Again, it's a kasha on Rav that he explains that Rabbi Yossi and Rabbanan say that Rish Chodesh Sivan was either Sunday or Monday. It's not Sunday, not Monday. It was Shabbos. Okay, it's a question on the Brisa before also. It's a steer. It's not really such a question on Rav. Fine. Says the Gemara, Achedim says that, and some argue. And some argue and say, no, Beis Din has the right to make different kriyas. So typically, every year has 6 29-day months and 6 30-day months. But if necessary, you could change it. And therefore, says the Gemara, the year of Yitzias Mitzrayim had 1 extra 29-day month. And therefore, Rish Chodesh Nisan was on a Thursday. And nevertheless, next year was on a Sunday. Why? Because it was 1 more month, 29 days. And therefore, from year to year, they were only 3 days apart. Not 4 days apart. According to Rabbanon, let's say we'll disregard the Brisa before, which says that Yidden went out of Mitzrayim on a Thursday. So you can say, no, Yidden went out of Mitzrayim on a Wednesday. I'm sorry, Yidden went out of Mitzrayim on a Friday. And there was 2 extra months with 29 days. And therefore, the year, from year one to year 2, Kvis was only 2 days apart in the week. And therefore, from Friday, it came to Sunday. Fine. Tosfos says that really, since we said that Rabbanan also agreed that Yitzias Mitzrayim was on a Thursday, so they won't say that there was 29-day months. You could say there were 7. Question is just which. That according to Rabbanan, the Iyar and Sivan were both Moli, and then later there were Chaseirim. Fine. But either way, the point is that although we find that in year 2, Rish Chodesh Nisan was on a Sunday, and if you follow Achedim's rule, then last year Rish Chodesh Nisan must have been on a Wednesday. So Rabbanan and Rabbi Yossi don't follow Achedim's rule, and they say that no, it's not so set, and therefore there could have been extra months that were 29, and therefore it could be that from 1 year to the other, it wasn't so far apart. Okay, fine. So, to summarize what we said over here, we were trying to figure out, we were asking questions on Rava's opinion in Rabbanon, or Rava's opinion in Rabbi Yossi also, when Rish Chodesh Sivan was. So the questions are all based on the regular rules, and the answers are, it doesn't have to be in the regular rules. So you find the Brisa which says they went out of Mitzrayim on a Thursday, which means that Aleph Nisan was on a Thursday, which means that Iyar was 2 days later because it's a 30-day month, and therefore it wasn't a Shabbos. And then Sivan is 1 day later because Iyar is a 29-day month, and therefore it's on a Sunday. The follows Rabbi Yossi, not Rabbanan. So the Gemara, no, there was 1 extra. Iyar was also 30 days. Fine. Then we find the Brisa which clearly says that Sivan was on a Sunday. Fine, that's Rabbi Yossi. Okay. Then we find that from Psukim that Tesvav Iyar was Shabbos, which basically means that Aleph Iyar was Shabbos. And therefore, if we follow our calendar, Rosh Chodesh Sivan should be on a Sunday, one day later. Not a problem. According to Rabbanon, it's 2 days later because Iyar had 30 days. Fine. Then we find that Nisan in year 2, Rosh Chodesh Nisan was on a Sunday. And according to the typical rule, which Acharim say, that means that a year before was 4 days earlier, so it was on a Wednesday. So that doesn't fit now with Rabbi Yossi, now with Rabbanan. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yossi and Rabbanan both don't agree with the fact that it has to be only 4 days. They say that you could add or take away from a month depending on the necessity. And therefore it was 1 or 2 extra 29-day months. And therefore the next year was only 3 days apart or 4 days or 2 days apart. And therefore Yitzias Mitzrayim could have been on a Thursday or on a Friday. That means that Aleph Nisan was on a Thursday or on a Friday. And nevertheless, the year later was on a Sunday. Or the way we explained earlier in the Gemara, you could say that Nisan and Iyar are both Mole. And then afterwards they had 1 extra month, according to Rabbanan. And therefore, again, then it was 3 days apart. 3 days apart, that the year before it was on a Thursday, and the year later was on a Sunday, because it was 1 extra Chaser month. Fine. That's that. We'll continue just a bit more in this discussion, and then we're going to continue with the story of Matan Torah.